thought, oh, things weren't going to go right. It's like, wow. Yeah, there have been some successes for me. How about you? How have you been doing?
Yeah. I've had a couple of very successful weeks myself. But Christine, what does that really mean? We're here to find out, and that's why in this episode of Soapbox Wisdom, we're talking about success.
And Barbara, if you don't mind, I'd like to share a little bit with the audience first before we really get into that aspect of where did this topic even come from? We were talking about this several months ago, I think, on a call. We got on a call for something very specific, and of course, this was one of the tangents that I went off on. And I just want to let the audience know where this came from. And this um, something came up about attending networking meetings, going to events or something, and at the end, I would hear somebody say, "Wow, that was successful." And I'm standing in the background. I'm like, "All right, I apologize. I'm a numbers person at heart. I'm one that wants to know what was the goal." But I was finding that people were saying something was successful when they had no idea going into it what it would mean to be successful. And I again, and this is the thing I struggle with. And then as I started to talk to you about this, Barbara, then I got your wheels turning about success and what does that really mean? And there was something that you brought up then too.
Well, it's very true because you got me thinking how many times I've heard, particularly in the coaching industry, the ending statement of, so you can live the life of your dreams. And I've often thought again, well, what is the life of your dreams? Because it could be different for you than it is for me. And then when you started on the success thing, it seemed that there was a parallel and we needed to dig a little deeper. It's
Right.
ambiguous for sure.
Yes.
It's ambiguous just to make statements like that.
Right. So, well, we're starting today with the dictionary. Well, I think this is from several different sources, but I do have some notes here on what the definition of success is. Success is the accomplishment of an aim or purpose. Success is a favorable or desired outcome. Oh, and this is a good one. Accomplishment of one's goals. Well, that sure sounds like you need to know what you're going into before you got to have a goal. Yeah, yeah,
You definitely have to have a goal. There is no question.
yeah.
What are some of the goals that you set up for yourself when you go into an event or a project or an engagement with a client?
Well, when you're talking about going to events, okay, then there's different types of events. Am I just attending for networking? I remember a few years ago when I was working with my coach, several events were coming up that month, and each one I knew when I walked in the door, I was walking in a different space. One, I was just there to network. Another event I was gonna be speaking at, another event I was a sponsor of, and I said to her on this call, it was only a 30-minute call, and I said, "Here's what I have coming up. Set me up to what I need to do from even before I walk in the door, and what I have to do and during the event and after the event." So I knew what my goal was for each type of event because they were all different. And I don't even remember, maybe they were all networking meetings, but again, maybe I was a speaker at one and a sponsor of another. I'm not sure. But that's call has stuck in my mind. So everything that I've done since then, I look at, okay, what's the outcome I want and how am I going to get there? What are those actions I have to take so that I can then declare that's a success?
So that's very interesting because even if every one of those events you were talking about was a networking event, you appeared or attended the event in a different capacity.
Mhm.
So if you were just there to network, it was maybe how many new people did you meet and learn about. If you were there to speak,
Mhm.
it would be how many people um, signed up to talk to you
Mhm.
or took your free offer or something of that nature. So even at a similar event, your function was different. You know, this week, I've had the pleasure of interviewing a ton of people from a company out in the Midwest. I'm revamping their website content. And it was very interesting because one of the key questions I had to ask them, what makes this company a great place to work for? And, you know, some people talked about the benefits. Other people talked about career development and progression. But all of them said, this company cares about us. They welcome our feedback and they listen when we speak and they're not afraid to hear what we're saying. So even in people who had similar views, there were a number of items that they could mention that all factored into the success they were feeling at this company. That's a pretty cool thing.
Yes, it is. Yes, that's awesome. Yeah, so like, y again, declaring something a success, something else, when you're just doing everything else in your business, declaring a lead magnet even a success. Was that a success? So many people put them together and just put them out there and forget that they're there, and it's like, again, numbers. How, and where are you putting that lead magnet to get the numbers that you want? What's the sense in taking the time to work on something if you don't know what the success of that looks like?
The metric, right? But also, when the people that I talk to, and you'll hear this from solopreneurs as well, that was a great project. There was good rapport between
Mhm.
that client and myself. What is that about also? It's about feeling, a feeling, feelings. So I guess you could say that success is based on both a number and a feeling. It's that balance.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I would imagine, Barbara, that yes, you're doing the job for that company to interview people, get the feedback, and so that they can redo their website and everything. I would imagine, though, that you're feeling that your whole project is being successful.
Yes, for me personally, because one, I love to learn new things about different companies. I love to discuss leadership and I love to dig deep and interview. And there was such reciprocity and mutuality on these interviews. So even if you looked at that piece of my assignment, yes, I would deem the interview process a success.
Yeah, yeah. And as you're talking, I'm thinking also an area of success is when we join programs, coaching programs, whatever. We need to develop an idea ahead of time for ourselves. We know the person that developed the program, we know the coach, they have their idea of success, but we need, I think, to have an idea for ourselves before we even start of, if I go through this program, if I work with this coach, what does success look like for me? Because all too often, and I'm sure you've seen it too, people in programs and nearing the end, "Oh, well, that was a waste of time." Well, why? Did they even have an idea ahead of time of what their success would look like, what they would have to do to get there?
Well, it sounds in those situations, you know, I definitely have heard people say, or this or that program wasn't a success. Is not what I wanted out of it. So, did the person providing the service clearly state what the program was about? Was the person receiving the service listening clearly?
Mm,
And had that person defined their goals so that they could even determine whether what they wanted, they needed, was in alignment with what a program, a coach, a service provider was offering. That shows there's got to be a lot of front end work if
Yeah.
you want to have successful business experiences. It's the
Oh,
goal thing, right? You
right.
mentioned
Well,
the word goals before.
so that front end work takes some thinking. And speaking of thinking, I want to share something with you. So a few days ago, I had to go to an appointment, and I didn't know if I was going to have to sit around and wait. And I hate to just sit and not have something to do. I didn't want to take my phone out and do anything. So I looked at my bookshelf here. I'm like, where's something small that will fit in my purse? And what did I find but
That's
a book by John Maxwell? And when I pulled it off the shelf, I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me. His book, How Successful People Think. Oh my god. I was like, "Wow, this is speaking to me." And I've just read a few chapters of it so far, because at my appointment, I didn't have to wait, fortunately, so I didn't get to read at that time, but the last few days I've been reading. And boy, how the thinking process and being successful. I don't know about you, Barbara, but I think that's another topic for Soapbox Wisdom in the future.
oh boy, do I. I suspect that people often think that when they turn to a service provider, that person just sees what needs to be done and starts working on the project. And actually, there's so much thought and creative thought that goes into it on the front end. It's that quiet time where
Mhm.
you're kind of assimilating information and getting your ideas in order and organized so that you can actually proceed to do the work. Thinking is a great topic and a very important part of business and this whole success goal discussion.
Right, right. Yeah. So we've been talking about some of the things you need to think about, the numbers, the feelings, the thinking and everything. Gee, Barbara, what happens when you don't have that goal in mind?
Trouble, trouble on the horizon for sure.
Well, this brings to mind something I was involved in years ago, a different networking group, and it was one of those that I went to every week. It was a small group, and I was a member of it, probably for 4 years, and every week I'd travel 30 minutes to the meeting, 30 minutes back, and I remember, driving thinking, "Oh god, what am I doing? Why am I doing this?" But afterwards, I'd be returning home and be like, "Wow, I'm so glad that I went to that." And it was yes, sometimes it was a feeling that I had that made it successful. Uh, Sometimes I got business out of it. Sometimes I just learned something that, helped me in a personal way or business way, everything. But I have to tell you, Barbara, what really ended the relationship with that group for me was when I wasn't getting any of that. I wasn't feeling success after those meetings. And I said to myself, you know what? I think it's time to leave. And I think our viewers need to understand that too, that whatever you're doing, when you're not feeling it, you're not getting anything, it's time to leave. And it's maybe again, it's with a process you're doing in your business. You've really given it, a good try, but it's not working. Yeah, I'm thinking it's time to leave. And again, this is all based on having those goals before going into something, knowing what does success look like.
Yeah, it's a really good point because we all grow as people, we grow in our relationships, we grow in our businesses. And as that growth takes place, circumstances change, which means our goals have to change. And
Yeah.
sometimes the old or the same ways of doing things just don't work anymore.
Mhm.
And that's okay. I suspect that sometimes it can even be a little bit uncomfortable. I've experienced that just as you have. It took, after 4 years, it didn't work for you, where you are almost a little shocked and then maybe uncomfortable about giving something that just feels good to you, comfortable, safe, but it may be time to move on.
Mhm.
And that's okay, because growth happens, goals change, and your definition of what it's going to mean to be successful changes too. So
Yeah.
knowing that's okay is important.
Yeah, that's a great lesson, to know that, yes, goals should change, and they have to change, but when you're not reaching those goals and you're not having that success, you know, then you need to make some changes. Well, Barbara, this has been a great episode of Soapbox Wisdom to you with you. I would say that this episode has been a success. What do you
Christine,
think?
I have to agree with you. I think we've definitely reached our goal.